Okay, hello everybody. I am excited to be here today. I have Chad Graham with Richards and Company, lawyer's office. We are going to talk about everything wills. I'm going to do my disclaimers. If you've seen any of my videos, you know my disclaimers. I've got noisy little dogs who might be barking. I'm also doing renos. So there's some bathroom renos going on, so that might have some noise in there. And then as we got ready to do the video, I had a great big truck show up in the front of my yard. So so we're doing good. Um, as always, if you have questions, leave them on the comments section. I'm still figuring it out. That's not my priority on how to figure out how to monitor the comments while I'm doing this chat, because I want to be present in the chat. And if I don't get to them, or you're not comfortable leaving your comment on the chat, feel free to reach out and I'll get you those answers. So Chad, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lisa. Although I have to say, now I'm a little off because you're telling me we're talking about wills and estates, and I thought we were talking about wills and Kate. So I researched the wrong stuff.
Love it, love it.
Just kidding.
Gotta love a lawyer with a sense of humor. That's perfect. So, I don't know if
Firm isn't one of the uptight ones.
Oh, that's great. So, okay, wills. It's one of those things that people really don't want to talk about,
Yeah.
but we need to talk about. We need to get the information out there, because you and I have both seen within our industry so many horror stories of things happening when people don't have wills in place. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna let you kind of say what you want to say, and if I have questions, I'll jump
Sure.
right in.
All right. Well, I mean, just to start off and kind of to think it through, surveys say everybody dies. So that is a reality we have to face, and I do totally get that it's uncomfortable, because people, when they come to talk to me about wills, are usually kind of talking about it already. That bridges the gap, so I don't see that as much on that end. But even still, some people, they call and they want to kind of avoid some of the language, and that's okay. We kind of work with that, but it's just a reality. And when I think about it is not so much thinking about our deaths, but thinking about our loved ones. A lot of what's going on when we do any estate planning, doing our wills, our powers of attorney, our personal directives, is actually to help those who are around us. There's just a huge amount of stress, a huge amount of grief going on when you lose a loved one. And then to add to that, having to deal with chaos around their life and everything that's in there, I think makes a lot worse. And I have, like, in a relatively recent personal family example, we had my wife's aunt had passed away, and there was a lot to do in organizing the estate there. And there was somebody who was doing it initially, and they really struggled with it and couldn't move things forward and deal with their own grief and with what they were doing. And they ended up asking my wife if she would step in and help, and she did. So we got the stress. But it was just to kind of see that was one with a goodwill that was done right, and it took a long time to work through, and there's a lot to it. And working wise, I've done a whole bunch now where people don't have the wills and have that same stress where someone's trying to deal with it and collapses, but it can be a total disaster. So I think that's the most important thing, is that really we're not talking about death. We're talking about our loved ones, and we're talking about dealing with our legacy and wishes, which I think are really important. So that's kind of the first thing I think of when I think about wills and estate planning and why it's important.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've unfortunately lost a few people who are close to us, right? I've lost my father and I lost my father-in-law. And when you're in that moment of grief, you know, not knowing what their wishes might have been, right? And if you've got that plan, I'm that worst case scenario kind of person. So I like to plan in advance so that you don't have those stresses or can avoid them as much as possible.
And it's even worse if you have nothing, if you don't have a will at all. Um, So I've got clients right now where that's the case. And unfortunately, in that case, you have to then determine, based on the Succession Act, who has the best right to apply for a grant of administration from the courts, which is an authorization to access and manage the estate. If you happen to be dealing with children that are minors or any other complicated matters, this is not an easy application to set up. You're dealing with the Office of the Public Trustee and Guardian in Alberta. And by the time you get there, it can be months or many months, even years until you get into resolution. And thinking as a mortgage broker, if you're not paying your mortgage for 6, 8, 10 months, there can be some real consequences. So really can just waste what you built up just because didn't plan.
Yeah. So you brought up children, and this is something that nobody ever wants to think about. But what happens if you pass away and you have children under the age of 18 and you don't have a guardian chosen? What happens in that case?
Well, I mean, fortunately, we live in Canada, which has a lot of really good supports and structures, so you know that your children aren't going to be literally left on the streets. But from a practical perspective, it becomes very difficult. You don't get any input anymore. So Child and Family Services are going to look, and they're going to try and find the best possible place for the children to go, but they're going to be in the system. Hopefully, they're going to end up with a relative. But I'm not going to mention any names, but we all have certain relatives that we're not convinced we would want our children to end up with.
You said it. I didn't.
But basically, when you put that in your will, you get the input. Now, in the end of the day, you will not get the absolute final say. The safety and welfare of the children will come first, but the weight of what the parents put in for a guardianship provision is going to be the heaviest weight as far as tipping the scales anywhere. So yeah, you essentially get a pick. You got to put them where you want. You got to talk to the people and express to them your wishes for what you'd like to see for your children, and hopefully they're people that kind of share. Typically, you're looking for things like shared values and shared family connections, so the children will stay connected with their grandparents and communities and school. All the kind of factors parents care about. Really, you get to think about that for your children when you're gone, rather than just leaving it up to hoping they end up in the right spot.
Yeah. I'm so thankful my girls are now of age, so I don't have to worry about that much. Because that's almost unsettling to think about. But again, it's that you've got to make sure you're taking care of that.
Yeah, making sure the right tooth fairy amounts come out.
Exactly. So so we're going to go along the lines of not having a will in place. If you don't have a will in place, what's the process for like a single person, and what happens to the estate, and then what happens with a couple and the estate?
Yeah.
Well, there's barriers for a couple being able to, the one that's left here, they don't automatically get the access. Like there's been times I've heard where bank accounts are shut right off and credit cards.
Yes. Now, so it's a little bit more of a full-bodied picture. Like there's a lot that goes into your estate planning. You want to work with your accountant. You want to think things through. Some of that can be mitigated by having joint accounts and things like that with rights of survivorship. But a lot of people don't want to operate that way, or have just never thought about operating that way. So I have a lot of friends who run separate bank accounts because they want to maintain their sort of practical independence. That's exactly what will happen. That bank account will be shut down. So let's a set of partners are together. One partner passes away, and they've had everything separate. Boom. All that's locked. Now, if the mortgage is automatic payments coming out of the account, now you've got to quickly get it in your account and make sure you can afford it. And all those kind of things need to immediately come into play. Car payments on credit cards, and yeah, the credit card information company won't give you information. If you happen to have bills that have been delivered to your house, you can probably use those to pay, but you're trying to access the resources, so it can be a real mess. But basically, so you're a single person, you've passed away, you didn't have a will. Really, for anybody, it's all going to start with the Wills and Successions Act, which is Alberta law, which kind of goes in and says, okay, if someone doesn't have a will, what do we do? And it's actually a really good act. So we're not at the worst possible place we could be. What's going to happen is that the courts are going to be authorized to appoint someone who to be the administrator, and typically you're going to have to get all the family together. So that single person is going to be their parents, probably. It's going to be a brother or sister, maybe a nephew or niece, depending on their situation. And there's a hierarchy of people who are entitled to apply. So I had one recently, and the person who had passed away had what typically we call a common law spouse, adult interdependent partner in the technical term. But they had things really separated and didn't have a will. So actually, the adult interdependent partner didn't want to have anything to do with administering the will. So, or the non-will, sorry, administering the estate. So we had to go through this hierarchy, and the next person in line was this person's parents, and the parents were living in Nova Scotia, so we had to reach out there and try to deal with them, and they didn't want to drive from Nova Scotia and spend months and months here selling and dealing with banks and dealing with the state. So they said there's got to be somebody there. He's got a brother who's there, so we tracked down the brother was willing to do it, and then at the end of the day we had to get the AIP to agree to renounce their right. We had to get the parents to agree to renounce their right, and they had to go and visit a lawyer in Nova Scotia and get them to sign all this paperwork and send it in. And the lawyer there, because it's just different province and they do things differently, did it wrong. So the court rejected it. So we had to start again. Anyway, it took months. It just takes months. That's the thing. It's slow. It's so slow, so painful. There's really nothing you can do to speed it up. And meanwhile, the estate's wasting. So, but as the process is finding the person who is most eligible to make an application for a grant, whoever that might be. And it's a chart that you go through. It goes up, it goes down, several generations up, several generations out. You find that person, you ask them if they're willing to take on the estate, and lots of times they're not. They might be in ill health, a parent in ill health, someone who's just emotionally distressed by the passing, and it's a lot to throw at them. And they've got to take all, and there's a liability and then responsibility. You become a trustee of the estate, and if you mess it up, you can be personally liable. So you got to have someone who's willing to take on the risk, someone who cares about you, someone who is a go-getter that will get it done, and that's tough to find. But that's the process. It's you go to court, you find the right person makes the application, has to be supported by all the other people who could make the application, makes the application, the court grants the application, and then you get the same powers that an executor would have basically to go and deal with all of the stuff. But again, you're looking at months of process and stress and figuring it out, and you probably need a lawyer.
Well, especially just navigating. And if it's not for somebody who has no clue or is just all of a sudden it's thrown in their lap, how do you just that's something that makes it difficult, right? To actually complete.
So I'm keeping the person's information covered up, but this is an application that's about to go into the court for someone to get a grant. And you can see that it's quite thick and there's lots of places to sign where all those sign here stickies are. Yeah. There's something like 40 different documents that are going in on that application, and you have to pick all the right ones and get them all filled out correctly. And it goes to it's an actual court application that goes to a justice in the Court of Queen's Bench in the surrogate court, and they make a determination on whether it's done right, and they're gonna certify it or prove the will or probate the will.
So I'm going to kind of devil's advocate, because now that you see that's going to cost you a lot more money in the long run than being prepared up front, is it not?
Yes. No, I mean, so in the end of the day, it's more, the cost is more the time and the loss. Legal fees are actually not so bad. So a typical Alberta estate, from beginning to end, paying all their legal fees. That includes all the costs the court's going to charge, all the costs the lawyer's going to charge, and all the expenses affiliated with it. It's probably going to be between $4,000 and $8,000. But if you think of that in terms that you're probably moving houses, cashing in savings, RRSPs, TFSAs, moving bank accounts, selling cars, doing all kinds of things that are going on in there. If you break that all down and look at each individual piece, you'd be ended up spending money all over the place as you go along. So kind of looking at a package. So that's not even where your biggest expense is, but your bigger expense is in your extra interest charges, your overdue debts, the credit issues, the foreclosing on the mortgages, the getting the car out of the hawk. Like it's quite a thing. So I think it's the time and the associated costs really that are bigger, where your legal costs really aren't going to change all that much.
Okay. It's just, yeah, it hurts my heart sometimes when I hear, that's one of the things. A lot of my clients have gotten that phone call from me over this last few months. I'm like, do you have life insurance? Do you have a will?
Yes.
Those have been my questions for my past clients recently, because what has this last year taught us, right?
Need to have an awareness of what's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, just a little side note, interesting is insurance benefits as well. Most insurance policies will have you designate a beneficiary, which is great. And that means it goes directly to that beneficiary and helps take care of them. But lots of times over a lifetime, people will collect all kinds of insurance. You might have life insurance through your employer. You might have life insurance through a club you belong to. You might have life insurance through your credit card. You might have life insurance related to your mortgage in your house. So you've got all these different policies. And you think about it, who was on there? Was it a spouse who predeceased you? Well, maybe you never did get around to assigning somebody. Any of those that aren't properly assigned, the money is actually going to dump into the estate, and then the estate's going to have to pay taxes on the money. So one of the things, again, that you can do in goodwill planning is to create in a insurance clause that under the Insurance Act makes a declaration that any insurance payout that doesn't have a stated beneficiary gets placed into a trust outside of the estate but managed by your executor, and then pays out the same people that the estate would pay out, but is just a free and clear gift and doesn't go through the estate and pay estate taxes.
That's interesting.
There's just stuff all over the place that planning helps with.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That's what I'm trying to get that knowledge out there and the education for the planning. And you can never be too prepared. And I find it's the ones that aren't that unfortunately tend to need it.
No, fair.
Like, I always joke around with my husband because he always thinks I'm increasing his life insurance daily. I'm like, hey, we're not going to need it now because we got more than enough on you. So
I'm just thinking, I can't, another file that I have, but I can't talk about it. But yeah, it's interesting. One thing that is true, when you're in any state of high emotional stress, and financial stress puts people under emotional stress, loss of a loved one puts people under emotional stress, you get under those points and people have real difficulty just getting along. And so I get to see all the time, you probably see the same thing, people at those moments, they're not themselves, they'll regret it later, but they go through, it's a real challenging time, and the worst in people can come out. And again, having your preparation in place means that mom or dad or whatever, or grandma, whoever, have taken care of that stress by making those choices already. And so there's still going to be issues, but a lot of those fights will never even come up in the first place.
Yeah, and have conversations. If you've got your will in place, have your conversations with your loved ones so that they know what your wishes are. Sorry, employee of the month number 1 needs up on the lap.
Oh,
Come here. He's a little out of sorts with here's Frankie Edgar.
oh, he's cute.
Oh, he knows it. It just let your loved ones know what your wishes are, right? And really choose that executor wisely, like you had said earlier. I'm the type of person where when things hit the fan, like I like to put my head down and work on something so I can focus. So that wouldn't phase me, but other people, they just crumble. They can't. And so you have to really know who you're choosing.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm going to amend my will to put you down as an alternative executor, if that's all right. But no, I can't tell you how many times that is the biggest issue. I've had go-getter executors who come in. Their legal bills are cheaper. because they put everything together. Everything about it is so much. It's quick. It's fast. I can get people turned around in weeks, have them their grant a probate, and have them moving on with the estate if the executor is someone who's organized. I've got others that I'm 3-4 months in. They got good wills and stuff, but the executor still hasn't, and you're kind of dogging up, constantly getting a hold of them, trying to get them. Hey guys, to be fair, there's so much going on that you can't really blame the person in that time. You just don't know. But you've got people just with different temperaments, and so if you're picking your executor, and you know the kind of people who are around you, pick the person who's the Lisa McInnes of your family, who's going to get that thing done.
Get it done. Yeah, that's my mother-in-law was named for my father-in-law, and I just couldn't go and see her do it, so I just helped out and planning part of it, right? The planning, everything was ready, and I think we had probate completed in 4 months.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be good. That's a quick turnaround. That's a good chunk of work, and you put effort into it. But executors can be compensated if they have to take time off work, or that's one of the things, because I make it sound a little scary too. There's lots of ways actually goodwill also accommodates for, is making sure that there's provision for what needs to be done that way. So I hope you can't hear that. I'm getting a whole bunch of messages sent to me here. Good, perfect.
Hopefully you can't hear the saw that's going in the back.
Oh, there you go. No, we obviously have good sound. I'm feeling fine. Bing, 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 bing. But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But just the idea that, taking care of the executors. In the end of the day, the courts will actually make a final decision on that, and we put that as part of the application. But if you have a particularly complex estate or lots of difficulties, it's very common the executor is going to do some traveling, have to take some time off work. Maybe they're going to do a basement rental, whatever it is. Stuff's going to happen, and they can be compensated out of the estate, and there's wills can be set up to do that, and there's also some general provisions under the law once you have somebody properly appointed. So it's nice to do that and kind of think about that as well. If someone wants you to be an executor, it is a big responsibility. Like our office gives a checklist with every will that we put out on what an executor gets to do. So if that day should come, it's with the will, the executor grabs it and then go through, and here's the first 5 things you have to do, and here's the next 5 things you have to do, and here's where you can find help. And so we've got the connection of the funeral home, the lawyer, the accountant, whoever is a professional that might be able to help them if they want. And so I mean, that's a nice little tool, but you could find something online for sure. There's all kinds of things out there that kind of tell an executor what to do, but it's daunting, but it's quite doable, and there's lots of help for you.
Yeah, for sure. And when somebody comes through to get a will done with you guys, do you give them the kind of the planning, the estate planning, where it's like, where's your mortgage, where's how you mentioned all the different insurances and everything?
Yeah. So yes, so we actually do yes and no. So we do 2 different intakes through our office. We do a traditional will process and an online intake process. So our online intake process, we did all the work in the background. We created what we think of as the most streamlined will, what the most common people need, and then designed information sheets and questions online. So they go through and it says, do you have this circumstance in your life? So just real simple one. Are you married? And then there's a series of things that come out of that. Do you have children? Series of things that come out of that. Do you have any insurance? Series of things that come out of that. So we've done the work ahead of time. We put hours and hours in this thing, and it works really slick. So the people go through and they make all the choices, and then we get that on the back end, and then we finish the drafting of the actual formal legal document, but all the information's there. Then I typically, or somebody who Ben's is doing it, gets a hold of the person and says, hey, here's what you're doing. There's a couple of flags that I want to point out to you here, and da-da-da-da-da. And so that's kind of our quickest, most streamlined way. But we say for anybody on our website and whatever, if they have more complex issues like blended family or out of province property or substantial holdings or business, they own a business or different things like that, then consult with us first. We do a more traditional process. And in that case, I sit down, I'll spend a half hour, an hour talking with people through what's going on in their life, where their estate's all at. I'll recommend that they go and talk to other people, like an accountant, whatever's appropriate in their case, obviously, ahead of time, and make sure they have stuff sorted out there, and then we'll kind of really custom draft for them.
Perfect. There's 2 more things that I want to touch on in regards to the will. Power of attorney.
Yes.
And I think it's living directive. What is the legal?
Some areas call it, we call it a personal directive in Alberta, but it's the same idea. Living will, sometimes called living directive. So the power of attorney, the word attorney doesn't mean lawyer, despite what American television shows would tell you. An attorney is just someone who represents you. So an American lawyer is an attorney at law. We don't use that in Canada. We're barristers or solicitors. But so you have a power of attorney as someone who will represent you in anything financial. They're empowered to do contracts, to take out debts on your behalf, to pay debts on your behalf, to sue on your behalf, to be sued on your behalf. They'll basically take care of your life. So really good scenario is you are in an accident and it's determined that a medically induced coma is the best way to get you healthy. So you're going to be out for a while and then you're going to be recovering for several months in the hospital. And now you get out and your credit card's overdue, your car payment hasn't been made, your bank, everything. Now you have a power of attorney and you have someone who can take care of all of that. They're authorized to go in, they show the documents, and if they had to sell your house to pay for bills, they could do that. They can do whatever is necessary. So we do that in Alberta through an enduring power of attorney. So it's a power of attorney that comes into effect at a certain mechanism, usually a declaration by medical people that you're unable to manage your affairs. And then all that comes into play. The other document, the personal directive, is also critically important. That one is for your health. So rather than all your financial stuff, it's your most important personal decisions, end of life decisions, pain management decisions, um, you know, uh, DNRs, do not resuscitate thoughts. Do you want, if you do pass away, what do you want to happen to your remains, as far as are you an organ donor and all that sort of thing? If you happen to get dementia and you're no longer able to care for yourself, where are you going to live? Who are you going to associate with? All those kinds of decisions are controlled by the personal directive, and you can share that with your family doctor, the family physician. They'll put it onto the HS system, and so you come into an emergency room in an emergency situation. Doctors will immediately get to work on you because that's what they do, and then they look for either your direction or someone around you's direction on what to do, and your agent under the personal directive is able to say, okay, Lisa wants this kind of treatment done. So that's another one you want to talk with the people about. Share your values, your thoughts, your feelings, your desires with them, and hopefully they never have to make those calls. But if they do, boy, I want that person I trust making those calls, and I don't want to be a bureaucratic box checked off by the board at the hospital or whatever.
And that's actually I didn't know that to give that to your doctor. So that's
Yeah.
like we have one done up. You guys actually did it for us.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll make sure that our doctor gets a copy of that now too.
There you go. You learn something new every day.
That's what I love, right? That's why I love doing these. No, I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything that you think we've missed?
Only the one thing, and it's I guess it's a plug for the profession, but I don't even intend it that way. We've had a number of people who have come to us who have done like online wills.
Yeah.
Just through like whatever. I'm not going to give away the names. Different, you all know them. They're the popular online ones. There's probably nothing wrong with the core product. To do a will, you could write it on a napkin, and if you do it right, it's going to be a legal will. But we have had people come in and say, hey, do you mind reviewing this and signing it with me? And we'll have a look at it. And it is a disaster. There are gifts that just on a real quick overview, I can tell will not be given. They're a contradictory piece of information. There are areas of invalidity. So what's going to happen with this thing is it's going to fail. And they're going to be in court fighting over this, and they're going to have to get somebody, a judge or somebody, to cure the will and try to guess what the person actually meant. The amount of money and time that is spent on that is going to be so much higher than if you just hired a lawyer in the first place.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and you don't want to go to court.
No, you want to avoid it.
Really. So yeah, no, that's awesome. Perfect. Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you. If anybody who's watching, like I said, has questions, reach out to me if you don't want to put it on the comment. I've tagged the company, Richards and Company, in the post, so you can find their Facebook page and then find their website there as well. If you want to go directly to them and bypass me. And thank you so much, Chad. I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, and
Well, this was fun to be on. I've never done one of these Facebook lives, so this was it's a new. I always like a new experience, and I like talking about this stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So.
Well, I might have to have you on when in regards to real estate after then.
Oh yeah.
We'll do one.
Okay, that'd be fun too.
I
No,
got
look forward to it.
lots of questions for real estate.
Excellent.
So yeah, so thank you very much, everybody. And I hope you have a fabulous day.